The last-minute push for Proposal 1, a call for cameras in the Supreme Court. Detroit reacts to Baltimore's unrest and the headlines we're talking about. Stay put. MiWeek starts right now.
Recently, Michigan's economy has begun to turn around. Michigan's gained over 250,000 new jobs. We've paid off $20 billion in long-term debt. And our population is increasing for the first time in a decade. But to make Michigan a top 10 state, there's still plenty of work to be done. Step up and help put Michigan on top. Learn what you can do at MichiganTurnaroundPlan.com.
Funding is also provided by Delta.
Good evening, and thanks so much for joining us for MiWeek. I'm Christy McDonald. After weeks of talking about Proposal 1, we are just days away now from voting on the controversial plan to fix Michigan's roads. It's been a long and bumpy ride. Yes, I just did say that. Governor Snyder is in favor of the proposal, but critics say it's just too complicated, and it will take too long for the road funding to actually kick in. So coming up, will voters approve or reject Proposal 1? And how many will care enough to even go to the polls on May 5th? Also, the historic case this week involving same-sex marriages brings up another important question. Is it time to lift the ban on cameras in the U.S. Supreme Court? Plus, the tension that exploded in Baltimore could happen anywhere. We are going to take a look at how Detroit is working to keep communication open between the community and law enforcement. And in the headlines, Mayor Duggan's answer to high auto insurance rates and Warren Evans' answer to Wayne County's money woes. That's all coming up for you on MiWeek. But we do start with Proposal 1. Voters across Michigan will go to the polls on Tuesday to cast their ballots for or against the plan. Now, proponents have used TV ads and packed our mailboxes with campaign materials. Even retired U.S. Senator Carl Levin is on TV urging a yes vote on Proposal 1. Now, the plan is Governor Snyder's choice for fixing potholes and crumbling bridges. It calls for a 1% increase in the state sales tax to raise money for roads, schools, cities, and other uses. And to date, we haven't seen much of a campaign from the opponents. And there are predictions that voter turnout will be low. And that's where we begin our discussion with our MiWeek contributors, Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. Guys, it's good to see you, but it's really great that we don't have video like that anymore. We just showed video of snow-covered roads, so I'm glad we're out of that. I'm glad we're out of that time frame. It could happen anytime. Yeah, I guess so. All right, so I think supporters for Proposal 1 are now going on a 3-day bus tour around the state. This final push is on. Nolan, do you think they're going to be able to change any minds now?
I don't know that at this point it's about changing minds. It's about getting their voters out. They've identified groups that they believe support this proposal, and it's getting to the polls. They've got a rather sophisticated get out the vote drive planned, and they've dedicated a big chunk of the $10 million they've had either raised or have committed to getting people out to vote. And I think this comes down to turnout. If you get the 21% turnout that Mark Grebner, for example, predicted, this thing's going to go down 2 to 1. But, you know, the governor's folks are thinking it might be as low as 900,000 people voting. And in that case, they've got a shot of getting their folks out to the polls and squeaking this thing through. I think it's a long shot, but it's the only shot they've got. You
know, you had in the Detroit News today a very interesting breakdown of actually what all will happen and what will be triggered if there is a yes vote on Proposal 1. Do you think that people have taken the deep dive into what actually is going to happen or how this actually triggers 10 more new laws?
No, this is absolutely too confusing a bill. I mean, a good ballot proposal is support gay marriage, you don't support gay marriage. You want to raise this tax, you don't want to raise this tax. When a ballot proposal is as convoluted as this one and has as many layers as this one, people give it about 4 seconds in the ballot booth and then check no. But I mean, this is a May 5th election. Nothing else of any significance on the ballot. You've got to really be motivated to vote, to get up Tuesday morning, go to the polls, and we'll see, you know, whether it's proponents or opponents that are motivated to get out of bed.
And if a lot of people sometimes aren't even motivated in a presidential year, Stephen, what are we going to see on Tuesday?
Well, I mean, this is the lesson of modern politics too, right? You have the favored side, the favorable side, hoping for people not to show up because that's the way they think they can win. It tells you how bad the politics are broken around these sort of ballot proposal way of doing things. You know, I am worried that if it does get rejected, that people will not understand that there's not another way to do this, and not even, it's not just in the short term, but even in the long term. If you want to raise the sales tax, which is one way of trying to get this money, you have to go to the ballot. You have to have people in the state vote for it. And so this idea that that it's convoluted is true, but I don't know a simpler way to get this done.
Well, the simpler way to fix this thing, and that's what they should have done in December, is raise the sales tax, or the gas tax. They have the power to raise the gas tax legislatively. It's what they should have done in December when gas was, what, $1.85
Well, we were all saying that then, right?
A gallon. That's exactly what they're going to have to come back and do after this, because they keep saying there's no plan B, there's no plan B. That's bull. There's a plan B, and the plan B is to come back and find another solution, because you can't leave the roads like this.
Okay, if you say the plan B is to come back and find another solution, give me a more specific plan B. What is that next solution going to be? And do you have the legislative buy-in from this new legislature?
Who knows what you can get this legislature to do? But the most logical way to fund the roads is through a user fee. So you either substantially raise car registration fees, truck fees, and what have you, or you have a simple increase in the gasoline tax, which you can do cleanly with a legislative vote. You don't have to go to the people. And we're still at very low gas prices. Now's the time to do it.
Okay, so that was my question. So you think that if there is going to be any kind of plan B, it would be coming through the legislature. It would not be another vote that the people are going to have to go to the polls over.
I don't think they're going to put that back. I don't think they're going to put that back in front of people if people say no this time. But the gas tax is not, I mean, it's not popular. I don't think you'd get a majority of the legislature to say that that was the way they wanted to do it.
Well, no tax is popular, but what is
that was the problem last year, was that they were all afraid in an election year of raising taxes, and of course half of them were leaving anyway.
Yeah, that was crazy.
They weren't going to suffer the consequences.
Irresponsible. They shirked their duty, and so we're sitting here now. And the risk is, if it goes down 2-1, as internal polls are showing on Tuesday, if it goes down 2-1, makes it that much more difficult to convince lawmakers to raise any kind of tax. And without revenue, I don't know how you fix the roads.
Does this have any kind of reflection on Governor Snyder's leadership? He's been out in front of this. He's been on this show. He came here with a chunk of concrete. He's been going around everywhere. I saw him, I think, in fluorescent orange. I think he was filling a pothole last week. But if this goes down, what kind of reflection does that have on him?
They pulled that question. It's interesting. They pulled that question, and the legislature gets far more blame than the governor does. This issue doesn't seem to hurt his job approval or popularity rate.
He had a plan. He had an actual plan to raise the gas tax and registration fees and truck fees on the table 2 years ago. So this isn't his fault. He asked them over and over to do it a different way, and they said no. And still he's out selling their plan. I mean, this was the legislature's idea. You don't see a lot of legislators out trying to pump this.
But this was a miscalculation on his part. I mean, he walked out of there in December thinking he could sell this, and that the argument was so logical and so compelling that he could sell it. And that's been the problem for the beginning. There's a disconnect in Michigan. Everybody agrees the roads are crappy and they need to be fixed. And it's going to take money to fix them. Nobody wants to pay for it.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're going to have to see what happens on Tuesday, and if there is actually a plan B should it not pass. All right, turning now to the national debate over gay marriage. This week, the U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments in a case that could decide whether same-sex marriages are legal in this country. With such a historic ruling at hand, the Washington Post, New York Times published columns calling for cameras to be allowed inside the nation's highest court, and so have some lawmakers. Now, the justices have cited various reasons for keeping cameras out, but is it time to lift that ban? And obviously, it was one of the big stories this week, everything that was happening at the Supreme Court. And it did lend to the conversation of, should it be time now for that court to be open so we can see, we can hear the arguments? So we do have recordings of the arguments, but is it time for cameras? Nolan, I'm going to start to you.
Well, yeah,
to be in the court.
You've got live audio. You might as well have cameras. I don't think there's going to be any risk of grandstanding in the Supreme Court. It just makes sense.
That's it.
Yeah, well, I think it does make sense. The justices typically or historically have opposed this not because they didn't want to be on camera, but because they didn't want to give a platform to the lawyers who are arguing the cases. You would attract, I think, some people who might want to get cases there so that they could be on TV arguing in front of the justice. And I suppose that's a slight risk, but it's a pretty serious place, and it costs a lot of money to get a case to that level. The people who typically argue cases there are veterans and very experienced at it. I'm not sure how much value people would get from seeing it. Frankly, it's not the most exciting thing in the world. A lot of people would be lost. They are arguing not about issues. They are arguing about the law and very arcane points of law very frequently. But you're a generation really from having 9 justices or 5 who really understand the value of that sort of public face and media and saying, okay, well, we'll put cameras in here.
I think you might be underestimating the audience, that people should want to know what's going on. And they, you know what? Hey, so maybe it is like C-SPAN, where you're sitting there and you're watching.
It's worse than C-SPAN.
Well, you know, even if it's worse than C-SPAN, it's still people's ability to be able to see what is going on in the highest court in the nation. So there isn't this shroud of 400 people get to sit and listen to the arguments, and that's it. And the access to that is what, waiting a week out in line to be able to get those seats? I mean, you covered the court.
Yeah, I mean, and you can hear it now, and I would be interested to see how many people are actually clicking on those buttons and listening to an hour of, you know, I mean, most of the court's cases, you know, there were 4 ERISA cases the first term I was there. Most people don't even know what ERISA means, and the arguments over stuff like that are not exciting. But I think it should be public. I think people should have the opportunity to see what goes on in their name in the highest court in this country.
So, Nolan, if you think that it's something that should happen, where can that push start to come from? Or is this something that it just comes around every big case, every couple of years, people say, we should be able to see inside there, and then it kind of dies off?
I mean, I think it's up to the Supreme Court makes its own rules. I don't think this is a legislative matter or a congressional matter.
Well, it makes the rules not just for itself, but also for all federal courts. And so you have district court federal judges who are fine with cameras and have been pushing to open that up, but the Supreme Court can't do it for them and not for itself, and so it's just a non-starter with the justices.
All right, before we leave the conversation, Nolan, did we get an idea of where we think the ruling is going to be in June on gay marriage this week?
I mean, I don't know. I think all the legal experts expect that it'll be a 5-4 vote in favor of gay marriage, but I don't know how much you could tell from that hearing.
Yeah, I think you're going to get I think you'll get a pretty broad ruling talking about how the 14th Amendment doesn't allow you to treat this class of citizens differently, or at least I hope that's what they'll do, and I think that's the inclination of at least 4 justices and probably Justice Kennedy. The question is whether they can get to a 6-3 majority with Justice Roberts with a narrower ruling. He asked a question Tuesday about whether this could be handled under the auspices of gender discrimination, and that was sort of a sign, I think, that he would like to sort of cabin this more narrowly and not make this sort of sweeping pronouncement. But I mean, we'll see in June what they do.
All right. Meantime, the nation continues to watch the developments in Baltimore. Peaceful demonstrations over the death of a black man in police custody were overshadowed by violent protests this week following the young man's funeral. They were the worst riots in that city since 1968, and the civil unrest comes at a time when several black men have died at the hands of police in other cities over the past year. I mean, this was the story of the weekend, and I don't think that that you could go by a day without checking in and seeing what's happening in Baltimore. What was interesting to me, though, is every article that I read about Baltimore or a column that was happening, Stephen, they also mentioned Detroit and the fact that the similarities between the cities and the makeup, some of the poverty and some of the policing problems.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're very similar places in terms of the population. There are some key differences, too. Baltimore's poverty is really, really concentrated in very dense areas. I mean, it's still a city of row houses, in some cases 100 row houses on a block, each with 5 or 6 people living in it. That's a much different it gives poverty a much different sort of tinge than it does here, where it's really spread out over a large area and people are more isolated. But the factors that have gone into why people are so upset in Baltimore are exactly the same as they are here. You know, it's poverty, it's lack of opportunity. It is a feeling that every authority figure you ever deal with treats you with disrespect and sees you as part of the problem or a criminal. You know, that's common not just in Baltimore and Detroit, but in cities all over the country.
Sadly, I don't think what happened in Baltimore this week was a surprise for a lot of people, Nolan, but when you saw it happening over the weekend and into Monday, what went through your mind?
Well, I mean, you have opportunistic hooliganism going on here. You know, there's now an expectation that an incident like this happens, and before we even know the facts, we've got to start burning down our communities. And I think the officials in these communities, the police chief was a disaster this week. The officials at all levels have to start saying, you know, this is not acceptable. We're going to stop defending this. We're going to stop making excuses for it. We're going to say, you know, this kind of destructive violence doesn't help anybody. And you want to protest. But in this case, let's find out what the heck happened first. Justice is a process. You know, the people walking in the street demanding justice, you don't get justice like that. We got to figure out what happened first, and then there's a process to follow. They're not going to drag these police officers out and burn them at the stake. I don't know what more they can ask for than a suspension, an investigation, and a process going forward. They're way too early to be talking about being denied justice.
Well, I think the frustration is not with the specifics of this case or the delay in information about this case. It is how this case fits into the larger narrative, and that the people, most of whom were protesting peacefully. I mean, let's remember, it is a distinct minority of people who were tearing up and burning up stuff in Baltimore. Most of the people who were out in West Baltimore were protesting very peacefully. But what they're protesting is the system that permits this to go on over and over again without bigger changes in the way that people are policed, and the way that communities have control over who's policing them. That's what people, I think, are upset about, and that's what people are upset about, not just there, but in other cities.
So if you're Detroit and you're watching this, you're James Craig, what are you thinking?
You know, I'm thinking, I think you're again holding your breath, thinking that let's not have something like that happen here, and you're trying to turn toward what is the problem? What is the disconnect between the community and the police? How often are these things happening here? I'm sure he's on top of that and trying to figure out how can we do it? How can we do it better? You know, the irony here is that people in poor neighborhoods need the police more than almost anybody else. They're the ones who live in the neighborhoods where there's so much crime and danger, but they don't need police who are going to treat them with disrespect and kill them for minor transgressions. There's a disconnect here between what the needs of the community are and what the police are doing, and that's what needs to be addressed.
Unfortunately, I feel that we're going to see this again somewhere along the line in some other city, and you say, okay, so we need to have this larger conversation about something systemic that is happening in the way people feel about how they're interacting with police. And so, Nolan, I almost feel like when are we going to get to this tipping point, or when do we get to this one place where we have that big conversation, or that something happens to change this? Because I feel that this is a cycle that is continuing.
Well, as long as police have guns, you know, folks are going to get shot. You know, so your choice here is just let's have officers without guns, or arm the officers, and you know, in some encounters, there are thousands of encounters a day between police and citizens. Most of it is resolved the way it should be. You have isolated incidents here and there. How many people have been shot this year in Detroit? How many citizens?
Sure.
I mean, it's rarely a week or two goes by without somebody getting shot. I mean, you've got some countries where cops don't have guns. We have to make that sort of choice, I guess.
I don't think the question is whether cops should have guns or not. It's how they use them and when they use them.
Most of them are going to use them appropriately, and most police go through their whole careers without firing a shot.
They do.
There's going to be situations where people get shot.
But what we're seeing on video most of the time now is police responding with deadly force to situations that really don't call for it. And and it's not one, it's not isolated incidents, it's a lot of them. And the connection here is, again, that relationship between police and the community. Who do you think you're serving when you put on that badge and get in a car and go patrol?
All right. And finally tonight, here's a quick look at a couple of other stories on our minds this week. Mayor Duggan rolls out low-cost auto insurance for Detroiters, and Wayne County Executive Warren Evans rolls out a plan to save the county from financial ruin. All right, you know, two pretty big stories here. I'm going to start with you, Nolan, about insurance in Detroit. What were your thoughts when, and the mayor just announced that yesterday?
It's an interesting proposal in the way that it dovetails with the discussion in Lansing over no-fault insurance reform. Duggan's asking for the same thing the legislature is being really vilified for doing across the state, and that is capping the catastrophic claims. It's one way to drive down insurance costs. It creates other problems. I mean, somebody's going to have to pay for the bills here. We've got a $18 billion catastrophic claims fund set up now to pay the bills for the people who are tragically injured in auto accidents. You eliminate that fund or the contributions of that fund, it's naturally going to lower your monthly car insurance bill, but where does the cost shift to? Does it shift to your health insurance bill? Does it shift to Medicaid? Somebody's got to pay it, and I'm not sure we've thought about, either with the Detroit plan or with the plan in Lansing, who's going to ultimately pay for this?
Yeah, but the initial thought of when people hear that their car insurance rates could go down about 25% or 30%, I mean, that's still a good chunk of change for them.
Well, the bills in the legislature right now don't reduce your bill anywhere close to that. It's $100 a year, like $8 a month. You know, if you're paying $300-400 a month, which some people in Detroit are, that's not going to make a difference. I think the question here is the trade-off. What are we getting in exchange for this big break for the insurance industry? And maybe they need it, and maybe they don't. But I certainly would not have started the conversation there. I would have started the conversation with what do consumers need, both in terms of rates and in terms of coverage. And if there's something we want to change there, then we should change it. But it's the industry is driving this, and they're driving it to benefit themselves, and the consumers are just sort of
well, Duggan's
on the
driving
sideline.
in Detroit, and this was, you know,
Right.
he ended up coming up with the same solution the insurance company.
Because the medical costs are what drive the rates.
Medical costs are what drives the rates. But again, somewhere they have to be paid. And you have a high percentage of Detroiters on Medicaid. If you shift the costs from the catastrophic claims fund, which is very generously funded at this point, to the Medicaid system, which is not, are we creating a bigger problem than we had before in the interest of lowering rates? One of the things that would drop rates in Detroit is if you had more universal coverage, if more people bought insurance. And of course, that's a chicken and an egg. If you can't afford it, you know, you're not going to buy it. So, you know, which comes first? But you've got to get all motorists in the insurance pool before rates are going to fall.
Does Mayor Duggan have a chance of pushing this through the legislature, his plan?
You know, I was really interested in the timing of this, given that debate in Lansing about these bills. You know, I think he's got a better chance now than he did even 2 weeks ago. But again, I'm not sure it's the answer. I think a $275,000 cap on medical claims is not enough for people who get into these awful wrecks.
You get there pretty quickly.
But I mean, he's got a chance of getting it through the legislature if the overall no-fault reform passes, because
right, they can't do it
if that
special.
fails, they can't do it for Detroit if they're not going to do it for the rest of the state, and they can't deny Detroit if they do it. So I assume they're going to be linked in some way, and the backers of the whole no-fault reform are going to see this as an opportunity, as sort of supplementing or supporting their cause. I'm sure they'll seize it. I haven't heard where the governor comes in on this issue.
Well, let's talk real quick before we leave tonight about Wayne County, Warren Evans, and his plan to cut $230 million over the next 4 years. What did you think of his plan, Stephen?
I think it's the best he can do given what he has to work with. I mean, he's not an emergency manager. He can't just impose a lot of things. This sort of smartly sets them up to be able to get their costs under control to an extent that they can maybe go and then borrow money later to pay things like the jail and these sort of lingering other issues. The problem is with all of these plans, they depend on everything going right. That you do save the costs and that you maintain the revenue stream, and that in Wayne County and Detroit is always something of a wild card.
Chance that he's going to get out of this without an emergency manager?
I don't think you're going to get this plan passed without some sort of state intervention. It's probably going to be a consent agreement because half of these savings depend on union bargaining.
Unions have to go along too.
I don't see the unions going along with cuts, not the Wayne County unions. I don't see them going along with cuts this deep without somebody's hand on their back.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for My Week. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to continue our conversation online right after the show. So make sure you go to MiWeek.org for an extra segment that you won't see on TV. We are also on Facebook and we're on Twitter during the week. So make sure you connect with us there. I'm Christy McDonald. And for all of us at Detroit Public TV, have a great evening. We will see you next week.
Recently, Michigan's economy has begun to turn around. Michigan's gained over 250,000 new jobs. We've paid off $20 billion in long-term debt. And our population is increasing for the first time in a decade. But to make Michigan a top 10 state, there's still plenty of work to be done. Step up and help put Michigan on top. Learn what you can do at MichiganTurnaroundPlan.com.
Funding is also provided by Delta,